Hey, Real Estate Maxis, Alan Corey here. Today's episode, we're going to talk about house fire. This is the real estate strategy that I use to retire early. And also, house fire is the name of my most recent book. But before I explain it to you in details, I want you to hear it from someone else.
And then the third book, which was probably the most transformational for me, was called House Fire by Alan Corey. And it was a really smooth read, really comical, really easy to digest. But in it, he makes a really good point that we will review and research things over and over and say we're going to take the leap, and we never will because we are holding ourselves back. And so in the first few chapters, he says, I'm challenging you, reader, 3 months from when you put this book down because you finished it, buy your first property. And that was in August that I finished it, and we closed on the house in Michigan in November. So it was almost 3 months exactly. And I was really proud of that because I wanted to push myself to completing those tasks.
So my favorite way of looking at this is we bought a house that's going to pay your student loan payments. And then we still own the house once your student loans are paid off.
Yeah, and that's actually what the book House Fire by Alan Corey talks about. He essentially says, if you can become a real estate investor who owns these homes, don't call them the home that's, down on this street, the Bank Street home or the Church Street home. Call them the phone bill. Call them the pet insurance. Whatever bill that home's cash flow is going to take care of, that's what you want to call them.
So this is student loan
This
house.
is the student loan house, yeah. It's really exciting when you look at it like that. Like, yeah, this cash flow theoretically could pay my student loan.
All right. So that was Justin Brown Woods and his wife, Haley. They're the host of the Price of Avocado podcast, which provides excellent personal finance advice if you guys are looking for that. They've got a very interesting story. They inherited $600,000 as a young married couple, burned through it really quickly, and then had a wake-up call and basically had to redesign their life, their financial life, and they did it partly through real estate. And it's awesome for me to hear this story unsolicited on their podcast. I actually met Justin at a conference last week, and he told me how transformational my book was for him. And then he talked about it on his podcast. And I was like, wow, that's great to hear. So I checked it out, and that's the story you just heard right now. And I want to share it with you, listeners, sort of the background. If you may be new to this podcast or new to my story or new to my way of real estate investing, which, I call it House Fire. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. So that's what we're going to cover in this episode today, the basics of House Fire. And before we get into that, let me tell you a little bit about me. Hey guys, my name's Alan Corey. I'm the host of the Real Estate Maximus podcast, and I've been real estate investing for over 22 years, half my life. I'm 44 right now. I've done it all, the new constructions, the short-term rentals, the long-term rentals, the multifamilies, the single families. I once bought 30 single family homes sight unseen in one day. I've done it all, and I'm here to share my story with you. And when people ask me what I do, I just find it easier to say, I'm a real estate maximalist. All right, guys, so let's get into house fire. So first, I want you to understand the FIRE movement. You might be familiar with this. It's the financial independence, retire early, personal finance gurus that are out there, and they teach personal finance advice off the study that's called the Trinity Study. If you want to look it up, I'll have it in the show notes. The Trinity Study in a nutshell says this: have a look at your savings, whatever that amount is. You can withdraw 4% of that every single year for infinity. You could have the worst timing possible in retirement, leaving your day job, but as long as you stick to 4% withdrawal rate each year, ebbs and flows in the market will always have you covered. You'll always have 4%. Your balance some years might go up 10%, it might go down 10%, but as long as you withdraw 4% each year maximum, you basically have infinity money. So the FIRE movement, a lot of the bloggers and personal finance shows out there have taken this study and run with it. And they basically calculate, hey, how much money do I need in my savings so that I can comfortably live off 4% withdrawal rate? So the way that FIRE-minded early retirees calculate that is, hey, take all your expenses, your monthly expenses. I'm talking about the car payments, the student loan, the mortgage payments, utility bills, phone bills, what have you. Add them all up. What do you spend in 1 month? Obviously, there's going to be an average. Find your average that you're going to spend each month and then multiply that by 12. And if you do that, then you obviously get your annual expenses. This is your burn rate. Now, if you take that burn rate, whatever that number is, let's say it's $100,000 that you're spending a year. All you got to do is take that burn rate, multiply it by 25. So if it's a $100,000 burn rate, you need $2.5 million in stocks, savings, IRA, some sort of stock portfolio. And as long as you withdraw 4% of that, 4% of a $2.5 million portfolio is $100,000. So that's going to cover your burn rate. So you can early retire once you have 25 times your burn rate. Now, there's a lot of ways to move the slider around. Obviously, you can reduce your expenses drastically in order to get that burn rate down so you don't have to save as much. Or it's crafting a retirement lifestyle that's cheaper than the one you have. Now, maybe you're not driving as much because you don't have a work commute. Maybe you're cooking more of your food because you have more time. A lot of these strategies come back to reducing your expenses in retirement. But also, a lot of these strategies require you to be a millionaire. You have to save up because most people's burn rate multiplied by 25 is going to be over $1 million. So I didn't really like that principle. I didn't like that you had to save up $1 million to retire because that makes sense to most people. And that also seems very frustrating. It seems like an obstacle, a roadblock. Wow, yeah, of course, if I have $1 million, I could retire and pull out 4% and live a good life. And I think people just stop there and they don't even start saving for retirement and they never retire and they just work and grind and say, hey, that life's not for me. And so that got the gears turning in my head saying there's got to be a better way, which eventually led down to the path of house fire, which I'll talk to you in a minute about. But a second thing I didn't like about this fire way of retiring, of withdrawing just 4% in retirement, it creates a lifestyle in retirement where you have to have a constrained budget, right? We all know your expenses are really going to go up year after year. So if you have a tight burn rate, pulling 4% off your retirement funds and expenses go up, that means you're living a more frugal and less glamorous life each year in retirement, because as expenses go up, you still are stuck to withdrawing 4% each year. And that's not my vision of retirement. I want to live large in retirement. I want to live bigger. I want to have a more glamorous life. I want to travel more. I want to go to nicer restaurants. That's how I want to live my retirement. So that was the second issue I had with sort of this plan that works, that mathematically works and supported by the Trinity study. Is just, hey, get your burn rate calculated, multiply by 25. As long as you save that, you can retire and stick to withdrawing only 4% each year. It doesn't matter if you have the worst timing possible, because if you have it spread across mutual funds and safe investments and some diversity, that 4% withdrawal rate is going to cover you for the rest of your life. So what is the better way? Well, this is where house fire comes in. My explanation of house fire is this. Imagine a bill that you have, maybe $150 internet and phone bill combined, something along those lines. That's a bill that's going to follow you for the rest of your life. You can't buy internet access and phone access in bulk to get a discount. You can't pay it off. It's a bill that's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. And I hate things that haunt me for the rest of life, especially expenses and bills. And I wanted a better way to cover that. So in the traditional fire method, that $150 bill that we all have, multiplied by 12, so that's an $1,800 burn rate just on your phone/internet bill. If you multiply that number by 25, that's $45,000. So for you to have your internet bill covered forever, you have to have $45,000 in a stock portfolio. Withdraw 4% of that $45,000, and that's going to be $150 a year, and that will last you for infinity. That seems crazy to think about. You have to budget $45,000 just for your phone bill. So imagine all your other bills lined up after that, right? I'm painting a picture where you're closer to having to be a millionaire and to retire this way. Now, the house fire solution is the following. That $45,000 could be a 25% down payment on a $180,000 house. Now, I promise you, there are thousands of houses out there that are under $200,000 that if you put $45,000 down payment on, which is 25%, in any market, we can find you a cash flowing property that spits off $150. So this is what Justin was referring to. Hey, let's buy a house. Let's call it the phone bill house. Instead of keeping $45,000 in a stock portfolio, let's take that $45,000, use it as a down payment for a house. That house is going to kick off $150 each month, and that's going to cover my phone bill. And that's the house fire method. You're burning away each bill one house at a time. And then you go to your next bill. Maybe you got your gas bill and your utility bill and water bill. Maybe collectively that's $100. Now, if it's $100 times 12, that's $1,200 a year times 25. You've got to save $30,000 to kill those utility bills. And I would tackle those first because those are the bills that haunt you for the rest of your life. Let's catch those on fires. Let's burn up those bills with a house. And then you buy a utility bill house, right? Save up $30,000 as a 25% down payment on a $120,000 house. I promise you those numbers exist. Long distance investing with a property manager, you can easily find those homes that kick off $100 a month. And why this method is better than the traditional route of doing stocks is this. If you do this for every single bill, you could probably cover most of your expenses with 4 to 6 rental properties. I was able to do it with 5. This is what happens when you reach retirement. Each year, your expenses go down because your tenants are paying off your mortgage a little bit each month. Rent will rise typically a little bit each year, $25, $50, $100, depending on your market. Everyone's rented a house before, and no one ever gets the same rental amount the year following when they renew the lease. And if you do, you got really lucky. You have a landlord who's checked out. Now, think of it from a landlord perspective. Adding $50 to the lease each year, that's going to increase my living expenses as a tenant $600. I'm going to have to spend $600 to move, right? Hiring the moving trucks, taking off work, the time and energy to go look at new properties. All that is going to cost me more than $600. So yes, I'm going to stay in your house, continue renting, even with that 50 bump. And if you do that every year, I'm still going to stay. So what happens with that? You get an extra $50 of cash flow as a landlord. If you're using the house fire method, now that $50 bill covers my Netflix subscription and my Hulu subscription and my Disney Plus subscription, right? Those bills out the way. And then I get another property, and maybe that covers my food bill. Maybe that covers my car payment. Maybe that covers my student debt. I just went down every single bill in my life and said, I'm going to buy a property for this. And this property is going to pay this bill. The cash flow is going to pay this bill. And the cumulative effect of this is that once all your bills are covered by houses spitting off cash flow, my retirement gets bigger and bigger each year. I'm not living on a constrained budget because each year those rents go up and my mortgage gets paid down. So the more houses I have, the more cash flow I have to fund my retirement lifestyle. And so what happens now for me is, hey, I want a Tesla, and a Tesla has a $500 car payment. I could get $100,000 of cash, go give it to Elon Musk and say, here, I want a Tesla Model X. And then what happens is I've transferred my $100,000 of wealth from my account to Uncle Elon's account, and he gets wealthier and I get a car. But now hear me, this is the better way, the house fire way, to have that exact same transaction where I get wealthier, not Elon Musk. $100,000 that is earmarked for the Tesla Model X fund, I go buy a house with that. $100,000, put it on a down payment on a $300,000 house. That's 1/3 down payment, more than I need to. But the reason I might want to do that is that it kicks off more cash flow. I still go buy the Tesla, but I don't buy it in cash. I buy it with a small down payment that has a financing opportunity with it, a car note that's, let's say, $500 a month. my house that I bought with my $100,000 kicks off $500 a month. Now that house is paying my Tesla bill. And let's just fast forward 10 years. Let's say it's a 10-year car note. In 10 years, that house pays off my car note. And bam, at the end of 10 years, guess what? I still have that house, and I have my Tesla, and I still have my $100,000. My $100,000 is in the equity of that house. Over the past 10 years, that $300,000 house is probably now a $375,000 house. That rental income, that cash flow was $500 a month. It's probably up to $750 by that time. And it was earmarked for my Tesla fund, which is now paid off. And I've got an extra $750 that I don't know what to do with. So I've got to go make up a bill to spend that cash flow. So if I just collect that $750 each month, so it just goes to my bank account, and over 1 year, $750 turns into $9,000. So maybe I'd rename that house. It used to be the Tesla fund to my vacation fund. And now I've got a house that funds a $9,000 vacation for me. That could be 1 week in Hawaii. That could be 6 months camping, whatever I wanted. Now I have a vacation budget house. And that's what's so exciting about Housefire is that my retirement gets better and better each year. And I'm not transferring wealth to someone else. I'm transferring it to myself into a cash flowing asset, a rental property, and that rental property's paying all my debts and all my expenses. So in Justin's case, what he talks about on the Price of Avocado, which we heard earlier, they called it their student debt house. I made that example in my book specifically that, hey, you may have student debt. And let's say it's $50,000. You can spend the next 10 to 15 years paying off that student debt. And once it's paid off, now you have $0 because you put all your extra money, you worked overtime, everything to pay off that house. Now you're 10 to 15 years in the future. Now you're going to say, I'm going to start investing in real estate. And the housing prices have doubled. Interest rates have gone up. You've just lost out on 15 years of home appreciation growth because you were focused on your student loan debt. So what he did, and what I advocate, my Housefire method is, yeah, don't pay off that student debt with your cash. Go buy a house that kicks off enough cash flow to cover that monthly student debt payment. And then 10, 15 years from now, your student debt's paid off, your house has appreciated, you've kept the money for yourself. And that's what he gets into in his episode 67, where he buys his first real estate property. They live in California. They bought a house in Michigan for under $100,000, and it kicks off enough cash flow to cover his student debt. And they've never been to Michigan. Still, to this day, have never been. They bought it remotely. These are things I teach here, the Real Estate Maximalist podcast. These are things you'll learn other people doing this in the Real Estate Maximalist Facebook group. Join my newsletter. I want to share stories like this as well. Follow me, Real Estate Maxi, on all the social media profiles. This is what you can do to change your life. It changed my life. And it's such a faster, streamlined way to early retire. That's not your typical traditional FIRE method of multiplying 25 times your burn rate. Another key piece I want to touch on that Justin also said was that you got a lot of fire under your butt to get out and invest in real estate, right? That's part of the Housefire method, lighting a fire for you to take action. In my book, I give examples how, hey, on your own, you can buy a house in 90 days. If you just make that decision in your head, hey, in 3 months from now, I'm going to buy a house. First 30 days, getting your finances in order, learning a little bit about real estate. Next 30 days, looking at properties, making offers, get something under contract. Last 30 days, closing on that house. I am actually working on a course right now that streamlines that says, hey, if you want my help, you want my coaching, I can get that down to 10 weeks. If you make a decision today, hey, I want to invest in real estate in 10 weeks, 2.5 months, I've got a course I'm just about to launch. So sign up with the newsletter to be the first to hear about it, where I'm going to hold your hand and teach you how to do the Housefire method and get you under contract and closed on a house in 10 weeks. Because otherwise, you're going to sit there and analyze and research and be frozen with fear, analysis paralysis. And 3 months goes by, 6 months go by, 9 months go by. You missed out 10 different houses that would have covered your bills during that time. You missed out on a year's worth of house appreciation. You missed out on a year's worth of an asset paying for your bill. That should be really painful to you. If you've got cash sitting in your bank right now doing nothing for you, let's put it to work. Let me help you put it to work. That's the message I want to share. I love the words that Justin said. He said it's transformational to him. The book Housefire was. It was transformational to me, and it will be transformational to you. So there's your Housefire method in a nutshell. Please, if you want to learn more, follow me online, join the Facebook group. If you want to take my class, you're motivated to buy a house in 10 weeks, join my newsletter, follow me on social, keep listening to this podcast. I hope to launch it in the coming weeks. I'm putting the final touches on it right now. I wholeheartedly agree this is the best method to early retirement. It has the lowest risk and it generates the largest wealth for you. And why I teach it is I love hearing the stories of Justin. And I want to hear your story. I want to have you on the podcast one day and say, hey, Alan, I bought a house in 10 weeks. Then I bought another one and I paid my bills through houses. I get tingles just saying that right now. Those are my favorite guests. Those are my favorite stories. That, to me, is the most rewarding part of doing what I do. It's not the money. It's not the deal. It's, Alan, this Housefire method changed my life, transformed my life. That brings a smile to my face. That is what I live for every day. I want to spread this. I am very evangelical about this. As if I'm spreading a religion, because it's really going to change your finances, which is going to change your wealth. It's going to change your life. We're going to celebrate it here together. All right, guys. I'll see you next time. I'm your host, Alan Corey, on the Real Estate Maximalist Podcast, and I'm teaching you how to go get it.